This is Delta, Ukraine's centralized digital platform for waging a modern war. While details are classified, it reportedly shows real-time views of friendly and enemy units on a map, it shows live stream feeds of thousands of cameras, it allows for coordinating complex missions, it distributes resources across the front lines, and it captures data for analysis. It's basically what you'd get with a strategy game, except the stakes are real. And everyone who's seen it seems to be really impressed by it. Here's US Army Secretary Dan Driscoll just a few days ago.
Ukraine's Delta Common Operating System is absolutely incredible. It fully integrates every single drone, every sensor, and every shooting platform into just one single network. Ours does not.
Then next, this is the Brave One Market. It's Ukraine's platform that many have described as Amazon for drones. It's a website that lists a ton of equipment that Ukrainian soldiers can order for their units. I'm not a Ukrainian soldier myself, so I don't have the login details to show the more sensitive units or the details of the products, but it's remarkable what even I, as a regular member of the public, can see here already. I've put a link to the site into the description box in case you want to check it out for yourself as well, but just filtering for FPV quadcopters, for example, I can see that there are 40 pages worth of models, including info about prices, descriptions, etc. And then filtering for interceptor drones, which are the drones that are shooting down the incoming drones, I get 10 pages worth of models. And while we are at interceptor drones, I find this size comparison between a $2,000 Ukrainian unit next to a $50,000 Shahed-style drone that it's supposed to take down quite mind-blowing. Anyway, there are pages and pages worth of ground drones that are supposed to transport supplies and wounded personnel to and from the front. There's a good list of reconnaissance aircraft whose job is to fly over enemy lines and to send a video feed back home. There are anti-drone guns which use electronic warfare to shoot down or to control enemy drones. And there are even all kinds of components one might need to either repair or to Frankenstein together a new weapon system from scratch. There are also tons of other categories that I won't go through here, and keep in mind, everything that you're seeing here are just the publicly visible items. Ukraine now has hundreds of suppliers that range from a few dudes with a 3D printer all the way to medium-sized companies like Rover Tech with about 100 employees, and also much bigger firms like Firepoint that last claimed to have 6,000 employees. And increasingly, Ukraine started introducing foreign suppliers to the platform as well. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, for example, just went to Ukraine specifically to talk about this integration. Not only should German weapons be available to soldiers through the marketplace, but as Ukraine's largest supporter, Germany also hopes to learn invaluable lessons from all the data and rapid iteration that is generated here. Because on top of just being a fun place to shop for lethal drones, I guess, platforms like these are incredibly important parts of Ukraine's innovation engine, and foreign partners want to learn from them and also participate in them. Platforms marked with E-points can be bought by units using a form of digital currency that Ukrainian units receive whenever they show proof of having eliminated some enemy. Each type of opponent has a different value attached to it, and the Ukrainian government updates these as its priorities in the war shift. In other words, Brave One directly rewards units that are successful and gives them the choice of what kit they want to use next. And that in turn creates competition and innovation among producers unlike anything we've seen in military procurement until now. Hundreds of producers, big and small, both from Ukraine and from allied nations, constantly tweak their products to fit exactly what the troops on the front line want, creating incredibly fast timelines for innovation. Take a ground drone, for example. Should it have wheels or a track? Does it need a gun or more cargo space? Should it use a quieter electric motor or opt for more range with a combustion engine? Instead of just handing over the decision to some central military planner, in Ukraine, the troops themselves have a vote too, which very quickly filters out what works from what doesn't. In various interviews, drone producers like TAF claim that about half of the orders now come via E-points, while the rest is allocated by the centralized government. In this way, Ukraine has created a digital marketplace for war that helps allocate resources better than ever and makes picking winners and losers incredibly efficient. But a marketplace is just one of many ways in which Ukraine has reinvented war, and their constant innovation has allowed them to shift the balance in two key ways. First, against Russia, where Ukraine is increasingly turning the tide both on the front and in the rear with long-range strikes that keep getting more frequent and more successful. But second, Ukraine has also shifted the balance of power between itself and its allies. Instead of just being a recipient of aid and foreign weapons, Ukraine has increasingly also managed to become a critical exporter and modernizer of its allies now as well. Zelensky recently said that his country now exports critical capabilities to 20+ countries and is actively supporting armies from Germany to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and beyond. And so in this video, we'll talk about how Ukraine supercharged this innovation to the point where its allies now need it as much as it needs its allies. This video was sponsored by Ground News. If you followed the early phases of the war, you probably remember Ukraine using high-profile foreign weapons like the Turkish Bayraktars, the American HIMARS, the French-British Storm Shadows, the German Leopards, etc. Ukraine received loads of foreign systems like these, and to this day, many of them are still in active use. But very quickly, the limitation of relying so much on foreign aid became obvious. The international backers often sent what was politically convenient, not what the Ukrainians needed for their defense. Months or sometimes years of debates were held before some platforms were approved, and others, like the German long-range bunker buster, the Taurus, never came at all. And meanwhile, support for Ukraine also ebbed and flowed over time. From Trump's pullback to Hungary's many vetoes and the rise of pro-Russia parties across Europe like the AfD in Germany, international shipments were never guaranteed long-term. So it quickly became clear to Ukraine that they needed to develop their own domestic capabilities, and that's exactly what they did. Ukraine had a few traditional companies with existing military expertise like Antonov or Motorsich, and those sprung into action, but just as importantly, entrepreneurs all over the country jumped on the opportunity to supply the front lines. TAF is a good example as they became one of the country's largest drone producers by now, while before the war they were a logistics company. They started by importing and distributing components to others, but then they quickly decided to start making drones in-house as well. Similarly, many people with IT and engineering backgrounds simply tried their luck, and the government actively made a push to coordinate them. We've already talked about the Brave One market earlier, which is the brainchild of Mikhailo Fedorov, the country's then Minister of Digital Transformation. Fedorov has an IT background, and his ministry before the war focused on building things like DIA, a highly successful platform to digitize and automate many government processes, which citizens and businesses in Ukraine could access through an app. When the war started, his ministry was tasked with building a similar platform, but one that would tie together the various suppliers and soldiers on the front line, and so they got to work. Before Brave One became the Amazon for drones, a marketplace, it first acted as a coordination platform, allowing the government to communicate its needs to their startups. This function is still active today, and so when the government identifies a new issue, like for example how they recently learned that Russia has developed a new generation of Shahid-style drones that now have jet engines, which are too fast to shoot down with existing interceptor drones, well, then the government can start a contest for its startups to find a solution to this problem via Brave One. Euromaidan reports that the participating companies will receive up to 150,000 euros to develop high-speed interceptor drones capable of exceeding 450 km per hour, which then kickstarts a race. This race generates the first layer of competition, and as we've discussed, the second layer comes from the open market on top, which then allows the individual frontline units to pick from the available options as time goes on. So that's Brave One. It's essentially a mechanism for the government to be able to set a target and then to get their startups and their soldiers to race to meet that target. But in addition to competition, the government also needed a way to coordinate all of this. They needed all of these various players to be able to plug into a central place for daily operations. Delta is that platform. You've seen it already in the intro, and from the start it was designed to be an open, standardized platform so everything from drones to air defense radars and more could plug into this exact coordination function. These digital platforms like Delta and Brave One became so central to Ukraine's war that Fedorov was recently appointed to become the defense minister of the country, and with this decentralized approach, Ukraine has been able to develop enough capabilities that by now, most of the country's weapons are domestically produced. The government says that 95% of Russian casualties in the month of March were inflicted by drones, of which about 90% were domestically made. Large parts of Ukraine's air defense are now conducted with self-developed weapons. Ukraine, of course, essentially won the naval war in the Black Sea using self-developed drones, and they've recently become so good at making long-range drones that they're routinely hitting multiple highly defended, highly valuable targets per day, such as oil refineries and sensitive factories, sometimes over 1,000 kilometers from the front line. Now, the country is still reliant on many foreign components such as chips or sensors, plus they're also of course importing many complex systems like fighter jets or satellite systems, for example, but here too they've actually made some progress. Firepoint, one of Ukraine's largest producers, just this month put up their first 2 satellites into space as a first step to start establishing an alternative to Starlink. The Ministry of Defense just last week announced the country's first self-developed guided aerial bomb, which they previously had to import from abroad, and while Palantir is apparently used in part of Ukraine's combat systems, the company's own leadership has admitted that much of the system that the Ukrainians have built is increasingly developed by the Ukrainians themselves. In either case, Ukraine's goal is likely not to completely replace every foreign system. The country probably couldn't afford a complete withdrawal of its allies anyway, especially since even much of their domestic production is actually funded by allies like Denmark, who long realized that the most effective form of support would be to just fund Ukrainian innovation and to co-develop new weapons together. Instead, Ukraine likely has two goals. First is to have enough competent domestic producers of weapons so that they aren't reliant on foreign supporters all the time, and so the country doesn't collapse as soon as there's an election abroad. And the second goal is to develop capabilities that Ukraine's allies need as well, because if we need them as much as they need us, then suddenly we have durable incentives to actually keep supporting them. And by the looks of it, Ukraine seems to have a lot of stuff that other countries seem to really want these days. Iran, for example, uses many of the same weapons as Russians do, such as the Shahed drones to fight back against the US and Israel, and so unsurprisingly, essentially all the Gulf countries have expressed their interest in buying Ukrainian drone and air defense systems. I think this is pretty common knowledge by now, but what has actually surprised me is not only that Ukraine has the ability to fight, for example, an Iranian threat, but rather that they could do so probably with relative ease given their production capabilities. I don't want to get too specific with the numbers because reliable information is really hard to come by, but most estimates that I've seen say that Iran probably has fewer Shaheds in total than the number of units that Russia fires at Ukraine in any given month. The production figures in Ukraine and Russia are absurdly high. They're something in the neighborhood of 10 million units, maybe even more. So other conflicts like the one in Iran, for example, they're essentially rounding errors for Ukraine. And with each interceptor costing maybe $2,000, it's pretty clear that their solution would be far cheaper than any other option that the Gulf states have had so far. Next, Taiwan is another player that would obviously benefit enormously from Ukraine's drone expertise. Having a huge fleet of drone boats could make any landing operation or even a blockade by the PRC even more challenging than it would be otherwise. And then of course there's Europe, who could be the most direct beneficiary of Ukraine's expertise in countering a Russian threat, and the continent could apply their learnings and use many of their systems right away. In other words, there are at least 3 regions who could massively benefit from Ukrainian defense technologies, and this is happening as those regions are suddenly more and more nervous about their traditional defense partner, the US, withdrawing. Trump has just been to Beijing and has questioned the country's weapons exports to Taiwan again during his visit. The US has repeatedly delayed critical shipments to Europe and has now withdrawn troops from Romania. And of course, there are many reports of Gulf states being unhappy about their partnership with the US after the mess that they've got into with the Iran war. In other words, there's a US-shaped vacuum forming all over the world, and that puts Ukraine into an incredibly strong position. And it's important to point out that on top of Ukraine just being able to provide short-term help, like sending someone a bunch of drones, they also have some long-term strategic benefits that are very hard to replicate anywhere else. See, everyone understands by now that the drones are the hot new thing. Every army wants to have their own, and every army planner has been tasked to figure out how to fight with them. But more than 4 years after Russia invaded Ukraine again, very few countries have actually built up any meaningful capabilities in this field at all. And this is not just the result of complacency. Getting good at the style of drone warfare that Ukraine and Russia are doing is actually really hard to do for a country that is not actively at war. See, unlike traditional weapons categories such as guns, tanks, fighter jets, and so on, which often stay relevant for decades with relatively little adjustments, drones are evolving so fast that any given model might become outdated in just a few years, if not a few months. Take the Turkish Bayraktars, for example, which were arguably the first successful drones in the war. Those have essentially become obsolete in Ukraine in just a few months and haven't made a comeback since. Some other systems have managed to survive longer, like maybe a few years, but if they did, they went through dozens of iterations and upgrades to keep them relevant. The pace of innovation is so fast that everything becomes obsolete almost right away, and so for any country, it becomes essentially pointless to build up a large stockpile of any type of drone. Sure, they can get some to train on and to start building a doctrine around, but never enough to actually reach a scale. So what's the solution? Supporting Ukraine, of course, and companies like the German firm Quantum Space have shown us the way. First, the firm started supplying the Ukrainian front lines with drones directly. They make everything from unmanned ground vehicles such as the Mandrill to flying platforms like the Vector. They're not the biggest supplier by any means, but by being in the race, they get real customer feedback and are forced to iterate at the same speed as the local producers. And next, a few months ago, they partnered with Frontline Robotics, one of the country's leading Ukrainian firms, to form a joint venture. Among other things, the joint venture will focus on making the Linza drone. This was originally a Ukrainian design, but it will probably get some upgrades from Quantum Space as well, and the joint venture has set up a production facility to manufacture them in Germany. This is knowledge transfer in real time. Similar joint ventures are set up between Germany's Wingcopter and Ukraine's TAF Industries, or also between Auterion from the US and AirLogics from the Ukraine. And meanwhile, a Ukrainian firm whose name I can't produce opened up a factory for its Shark drones in the UK, for example, and the list goes on. Zelensky calls this their Build with Ukraine initiative, where they actively encourage win-win collaborations that help export Ukrainian know-how in exchange for support. And in a situation like this, Ukraine is no longer looking for handouts, they're looking for partners. They're turning themselves into an irreplaceable asset, one that trades real-time expertise hard-won by the blood of their own people. And for many armies around the world who don't want to pay the blood price themselves, that is an incredibly attractive deal. Okay, a part of my research for this episode was done on Ground News, an app and a website that gathers news from over 50,000 sources and adds critical context to them, such as each outlet's bias, how factual they are, and who owns them. And for researching topics like the Ukraine war, I like to use them in two ways. First, whenever a specific story makes me pause, like this one on how the US Treasury is dealing with sanctioned Russian oil, I double check it on Ground News. I can see over 60 publications reporting on the story, and for each one I can see valuable data. I can filter for left-leaning publications and see, for example, that Zeit Online has very high factuality ratings and also who its owners are. Meanwhile, I can also filter for right-leaning publications and find the Washington Examiner with high factuality and again a clear owner. Very useful. But second, I also like to use Ground News' blind spot section that specifically helps highlight articles that were mostly only covered by one side or the other, which helps make sure that I don't have any big blind spots myself. For example, Germany and Ukraine launching the Brave Germany Defense Tech program, which I talked about in the video, might have been missed by mostly right-leaning readers because this story was mostly covered by sources on the left. I'm able to get the full picture on how every story is being covered with Ground News. They've even been endorsed by the Nobel Peace Center for their positive impact on media literacy. They're completely subscriber funded, so there's no corporate influence deciding what you see, and right now you can get 40% off the same unlimited access Vantage plan that I use by subscribing through my link ground.news/TechAltar, which is also linked in the description, or by scanning the QR code. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.